The woman in the silk blouse didn't even look up from her phone when she said it. Some of us actually have places to be. Audrey Sinclair heard it. The cashier heard it. The elderly man behind the woman heard it. Half the waiting line at checkout 7 in that Loblaws on Burrard heard it. And Audrey, 43 years old, 12-hour shift on her feet, a bag of groceries she'd been calculating in her head since she walked through the door, felt her face go warm in a way that had nothing to do with the November cold she'd just come in from. She had been standing at the register for maybe 90 seconds. She was using her PC Optimum points, and the machine was asking her to confirm. That was it. That was the crime. Audrey pressed confirm. Her hands were steadier than she expected. The woman behind her, late 40s, highlighted hair, a camel coat that probably cost more than Audrey's last 2 car payments combined, let out a long breath through her nose. The kind of breath that's meant to be heard. The kind that says, "I am tolerating you, and I want you to know it." "Is there an express lane available?" the woman asked the cashier. Not Audrey, the cashier, as if Audrey were a piece of furniture between her and the door. The cashier, a young woman maybe 20, name tag reading Camille, glanced up and said quietly, "This is the express lane, ma'am." The woman's name, Audrey would find out later, was Philippa Crane, wife of Douglas Crane, who ran one of the larger commercial real estate firms in Vancouver. Philippa sat on the boards of 2 arts foundations and appeared in the social pages of Vancouver magazine at least 3 times a year, always photographed at galas with champagne and a careful smile. She lived in a house in Shaughnessy that had its own name. She did not wait in lines. But none of that was on the receipt Audrey was waiting for. "The points system always takes forever," Philippa said, to no one and everyone. "They should have a separate lane for people who need to do their budgeting." She said it the way people say things they want credit for not saying directly. Budgeting. A small word with a whole lot underneath it. Audrey's daughter was 8 years old and home with a neighbor, and Audrey had promised she'd be back by 7. It was 6:42. She worked in the cardiac care unit at Vancouver General. 12-hour shifts, 3 or 4 times a week, a job that asked her to be calm when other people were falling apart. She was good at it. She had been good at it for 16 years. She did not say any of this. She took her receipt. She picked up her bag, and she walked out. What nobody in that checkout line knew, except for one person standing near the magazine rack with a basket of groceries and a view of the whole thing, was that Audrey Sinclair had been using coupons and points since before it was something you had to explain to anyone. She'd started when her husband Marcus left. Not in a dramatic way, not all at once. He just slowly unmade himself from their life until one day there was nothing left to unmake. Lily was 3. Audrey had a nursing license, a half-empty apartment in Kitsilano, and exactly $4,012 in her account. She remembers the number because she checked it on her phone in the parking lot of the Safeway after Marcus told her he wasn't coming home, and she needed to understand what that meant financially. $4,012. Lily's daycare alone was $1,400 a month. She had not grown up poor. Her mother, a retired teacher from Kelowna, would have been horrified at the word. But she had grown up careful. She knew how to make things stretch. She remembered her mother cutting coupons from the Kelowna Daily Courier on Sunday mornings and filing them by category in a little accordion folder. And she'd thought at the time that it seemed like a lot of effort. She understood it now. She understood it in her bones. 16 years in cardiac care, she'd learned to read a room in under 30 seconds. She could look at a family in a waiting room and know before she even spoke to them whether the news was going to break them or hold them together. She'd learned that people fall apart in very specific ways. Some go silent, some go loud, some reach for whoever is nearest, some back up against the wall and try to make themselves small. She'd learned not to flinch at any of it. She hadn't flinched in that grocery store either. But she'd felt it. She was sitting in her car in the parkade, bags in the back seat, engine not yet started, when she let herself feel it. Just for a minute. Not crying. She was too tired to cry, but that particular ache of being looked at and found wanting by someone who doesn't know the first thing about you. Budgeting. She thought about the 12-hour shift she'd just come off. She thought about the 72-year-old man she'd sat with at 2 in the morning when his wife couldn't be there and he was scared and trying not to show it. She thought about the young resident who'd frozen during a code and how she'd talked him through it without raising her voice, keeping everything steady because someone had to. She thought about all the things she carried that nobody in that checkout line would ever see. She started the car. She drove home. Lily was asleep on the neighbor's couch, her backpack still on, one shoe off and one shoe on, the way she always fell asleep when she was trying hard not to. Audrey carried her up the stairs, got her into bed, smoothed her hair back. Lily smelled like the grape shampoo she insisted on. Audrey stood in the dark room for a moment longer than she needed to. Then she unpacked the groceries and didn't think about Philippa Crane again. Or she tried not to. The man who'd been standing near the magazine rack was named Theodore Brandt. He was 61 years old, and he had been watching the whole exchange at checkout 7 with the particular attention of someone who has seen a lot of the world and still manages to be surprised by it. Theo to most people, though he didn't volunteer it, ran a company called Brandt Pacific, which developed mixed-use properties along the coast. Not the flashiest name in Vancouver real estate, but one of the most solid. He'd been in the business for 30 years. He'd grown up in a 2-bedroom house in East Van with his mother, who cleaned offices on Burrard Street, and he'd put himself through BCIT and then UBC, one construction job at a time. He knew what $4,000 in a bank account felt like. He had an accordion coupon folder somewhere in his memory, filed away next to the image of his mother on her knees, scrubbing a lobby floor in the dark. He wasn't in the Loblaws because he needed groceries. Exactly. He'd been walking back from a meeting that had run long, and he'd ducked in to get something for dinner because the fridge at home was empty, and the alternative was another night ordering in, which he'd been doing too much of lately. He was in the process of what his assistant called recalibrating, which was a polite way of saying his marriage had ended 8 months ago and he was still figuring out how to live alone without it feeling like failure. He watched the woman in the camel coat make her 2-syllable comment about budgeting. He watched the nurse, he'd noticed the scrubs, take her receipt and leave without a word, with her back straight in a way that cost her something. He watched Philippa Crane check out in under 2 minutes, nodding at nothing, and leave. And then he stood there for another moment, holding his basket with a rotisserie chicken and a bag of baby carrots, and thought about the fact that he hadn't done anything. He paid for his groceries. He walked to the parkade. He sat in his truck. He was 3 rows away from where Audrey Sinclair was sitting in her car, though he didn't know that. They were both just sitting there, in the gray concrete of a Vancouver parkade in November, in separate silences. He saw the scrubs again 3 weeks later. He was visiting his mother, Elaine, at St. Paul's. She'd had a minor cardiac event. A small one, as cardiac events go, but there is no such thing as a small one when it's your mother. And she was being monitored for a few days. He was coming in on a Tuesday afternoon, travel mug in hand, and he passed a nurse in the corridor who was talking quietly to a man in his 70s. The kind of conversation that looks like it takes practice to have that naturally. He recognized her before he remembered from where. The way you recognize someone by the way they carry themselves before you've placed the face. She finished the conversation. A hand on the man's arm, a nod, something she said that made him straighten slightly, and then she turned and saw Theodore looking at her and looked back at him with the polite non-expression of a hospital professional who has been looked at by strangers all day. "Sorry," he said. "I think I saw you at the Loblaws on Burrard a few weeks ago." Her expression didn't change much. "Okay," she said, which was not unfriendly but was also not exactly opening a door. "I was in the line behind you, behind the woman who—" He stopped. "I wanted to say something at the time, and I didn't. I've been bothered by that." Audrey looked at him for a moment. She had learned, in 16 years of shift work, to make very fast assessments of people. Not judgments, assessments. Whether someone was going to panic, whether they were going to hold together, whether they were telling you the truth about their symptoms. She read Theodore Brandt in about 4 seconds and decided he was telling her the truth. "It's fine," she said. "It's really not," he said. What she said was awful. She was having a bad day. You just had a 12-hour shift. How do you know that? The scrubs, the groceries, the way you looked at your watch in line. She raised an eyebrow. "Your observant, professional hazard." He shifted the travel mug to his other hand. "My mother is in room 414. Elaine Brandt. I don't know if you know her." Audrey's expression shifted. Not softened exactly, but something moved across it. "I know Elaine," she said. "She's doing well. She's stubborn, which in cardiac care is actually a good quality." He smiled for the first time. "That's the most accurate thing anyone's ever said about her. She talks about you," Audrey said, and then seemed to consider whether she was saying too much and decided she wasn't. "She's proud of you." He didn't know what to do with that in a hospital corridor, so he said, "I'm going to go see her, but thank you. And I'm sorry I didn't say something. In the store." "You didn't owe me anything," Audrey said. "No," he agreed, "but I still should have." She nodded, one professional nod, the kind that closes a conversation cleanly, and moved on down the corridor. He told his mother about her. Elaine Brandt was 78 years old and had been cleaning offices until she was 67, at which point her son had sat across from her at the kitchen table and said, very quietly, that she needed to stop, and she'd looked at him for a long moment and then said, "All right then." She had opinions about everything, which she delivered with the serene confidence of someone who has earned the right to them, and she had been trying to get Theodore remarried for the better part of 3 years with the focused energy of a project manager approaching a deadline. "The nurse," she said. "Audrey. You know her." "Of course I know her. She sat with me on Monday night when I couldn't sleep. We talked for almost an hour." Elaine was quiet for a moment. "She told me about her daughter, Lily. She's 8, I think. She didn't mention a daughter to me. You'd just met her in a hallway, Theodore. She doesn't owe you her whole life." Elaine looked at him. "What did you say to her?" I apologized. "For not speaking up at the grocery store." "Good. That was it." His mother looked at him the way she had been looking at him for 61 years, with complete clarity and very little patience for nonsense. "You know," she said, "when someone does something kind for you in the middle of a hard night, you don't forget it." He didn't say anything. "She stayed with me for almost an hour," Elaine said. "She didn't have to do that." He started bringing his mother better coffee. Not for any particular reason, or at least not one he was willing to name. He just noticed on his second visit that the coffee in the ward was terrible and his mother deserved better coffee, and there was a Pallet Coffee Roasters on the walk from the parkade, and it seemed like a reasonable thing to do. He started coming in the mornings before work, which he'd been doing anyway, but now with 2 cups instead of 1. The second cup, left at the nurse's station without comment, was received without comment. On the 4th morning, Audrey paused beside him in the hallway while he was putting his coat on and said, "The good coffee is a bit excessive." "I don't know what you mean," he said. "We have a coffee maker in the staff room. How is it?" A pause. "Terrible, right," he said. He put his coat on. "My mother's being discharged Friday. She's going to need some follow-up care. I was wondering if you could recommend." "We'll go through the discharge coordinator," Audrey said. "She'll have a list of resources." "Of course." He picked up his bag. "I was also going to ask if you wanted to have coffee somewhere that isn't a hospital." She looked at him. He'd noticed, over the past 2 weeks, that she had a very good look, not cold, but measured. The kind of look that doesn't give anything away until it decides to. "I have a daughter," she said. "I know. Lily. My mother told me. I don't have a lot of time." "I'm asking for coffee," he said. "Not a lot of time." Another pause, the measured look, and then something shifted, very slightly, at the corner of her mouth. "There's a place on Davy Street I like," she said. "Saturdays. I drop Lily at skating, at 10. I have about an hour." Saturday said. "What's the place called?" "J.J. Bean, the one by the community center." She was already moving away down the corridor. Don't be late. He was not late. He was, in fact, there 7 minutes early, which he hadn't done for a first anything in a very long time. He sat at a table by the window and watched November rain come down on Davy Street and tried not to feel ridiculous about the fact that he was nervous. He was 61 years old. He had negotiated multi-million-dollar property deals in rooms that smelled of stress and money. He had no business being nervous about coffee. She came in at 3 minutes past 10, still in her coat, cheeks red from the cold, and spotted him at the window and walked over without hesitation. "Lily made it onto the ice in under 5 minutes today," she said, pulling off her gloves. "Personal record. Is that good?" "She usually argues for at least 10. She sat down. "She's going through a phase where skates are an instrument of oppression." "How old is she?" 8 going on 45. Audrey picked up the menu without really needing it. "She'll love it in 6 months. She always does." He listened to her talk about Lily the way he'd learned to listen to his mother, with full attention, not waiting for a space to say something. She talked about her the way parents talk about children they're genuinely delighted by, not just performing delight for company. It was one of the more attractive things he'd seen in a while. "Your mother is doing well," she said, after a while. "I checked in on her Thursday," she said. "She also told me you fixed her TV. I found the remote between the mattress and the rail. It wasn't exactly cardiac surgery. She said you were a miracle." She exaggerates. He wrapped both hands around his coffee cup. "She doesn't, actually. I've known her 61 years. She says what she means." He looked out at the rain. "You were kind to her when she was scared. She wasn't going to forget that." Audrey was quiet for a moment. "It's the job," she said, but she said it without any deflection in it, just matter-of-factly, the way people say things that are true. "How long have you been at VGH?" 16 years. Cardiac care for 12 of those. Do you like it?" She seemed to actually consider this, which he appreciated. People who are asked if they like their job usually either defend it immediately or apologize for it. She did neither. "It's the best thing I know how to do," she said finally. "Some days I love it, some days I drive home and I have to sit in the car for a while before I can be a regular person." She paused. "Lily knows, when I need 10 minutes she'll put the TV on and give me the couch." 8 years old, he said. "She's been watching me do it since she was 4. Audrey looked at him levelly. "Her dad left when she was 3. "I know," he said. "Well, I didn't know the details. My mother mentioned she was on her own. Your mother is quite forthcoming." Aggressively so." He smiled. "I'm divorced. 8 months. 22 years first, that's a long time. It was a long marriage." He didn't elaborate and she didn't ask. He appreciated that too. No kids. Which was, well, there it is. They sat with that for a moment. The rain kept coming down. "The woman at the grocery store," Audrey said without any particular preamble. "I've thought about it more than I should." "What she said?" What it felt like to say nothing back. She looked down at her cup. "I'm not usually without words, but I was so tired and I had Lily's dinner in that bag, and I thought, she's not worth it. She doesn't know anything about me. Let her go." She paused, and I still felt like I'd lost something, driving home. "You hadn't, I know that." She looked up. "But feelings aren't always logical. You know that in cardiac care." He did. He'd spent 8 months learning that feelings aren't logical. "The woman's name is Philippa Crane," he said. "Her husband is in commercial real estate. We've been in rooms together. I don't know her well, but I know the type." He put his cup down. "She's the kind of person who's used to rooms arranging themselves around her. She's not used to being observed." Audrey looked at him. "You know who she is? Vancouver commercial real estate is a small community." He paused. "I could have said something at the time. I should have. I didn't, and I'll own that." "You apologized. I mean said something to her." "Called it out." He looked out at the street. "I've been thinking about why I didn't. Honestly, I think I didn't want the scene, which is its own kind of cowardice." She was looking at him with that measured look again. "You're harder on yourself than you need to be. Maybe." He finished his coffee. "Or maybe I've been in enough rooms with women like Philippa Crane and said nothing enough times that it's overdue." Elaine went home on Friday with a care plan and a list of follow-up appointments and a small bag of hospital-branded tissues that she took for reasons she didn't explain. Theodore drove her, and she sat in the passenger seat of his truck and looked out the window at Vancouver in late November. The rain, the mountains hidden in cloud, the Christmas lights just starting to appear along Burrard, and said nothing for most of the drive, which was unusual enough to worry him. "Mum," he said at a red light. "You all right?" "I'm thinking," she said, about how I spent 40 years cleaning buildings that other people owned." She kept looking out the window. "I never minded it. I want you to know that. I wasn't waiting to be rescued from it. I chose it because it let me be home when you came back from school, and I'd do it the same way again." She turned to look at him, but I was aware of it. Every day. The way some people looked at me. He waited. "That nurse," she said. "Audrey. She stayed with me because she wanted to, not because I was anyone. Not because of what you do." She paused. "She stayed because I was a person in the dark, and she had an hour." "I know. You like her." "Mum." "Theodore. I'm 78, and I just had a cardiac event. I'm allowed to say things directly." He didn't say anything for a block or two. "Yes," he said finally. "I like her." Elaine turned back to the window. "She's worth being honest with," she said. "Don't play it too careful." He sent her a text that evening. "Just, Mum's home. Thank you for taking care of her." Audrey replied 20 minutes later. "She's wonderful. She told me the whole story about the accordion folder she used to use for coupons." He stared at that for a moment. "Then, did she?" "Every detail, including the Sunday morning filing system." He sat in his kitchen. Quiet November dark outside, the particular quality of a house that's still learning to be empty, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not big and not loud. Just the small specific warmth of being known, even sideways, even from his distance. He typed, "My mother would like to have you and Lily for dinner sometime, if that's not too strange." 3 minutes. 4. Then, "It's a little strange." He smiled. "But Lily would like to meet the woman who fixed the TV in room 414. She's heard a lot about it." He set the phone down. He looked at the rain against the kitchen window. He thought about his mother sitting at a kitchen table on Sunday mornings, filing coupons with a focus that looked, to a child, like something small but was actually something else entirely. The careful architecture of a life, being held together by sheer intention. He thought about Audrey in a grocery store, receipt in hand, choosing not to make herself smaller to appease someone who didn't deserve the effort. He thought about the things people carry that you can't see from a distance. Outside, the rain kept coming, the city kept going, and in an apartment in Kitsilano, an 8-year-old girl with strong opinions about skate laces was asleep with her backpack still on, one shoe off and one shoe on, while her mother sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea gone cold, thinking about all the places she hadn't expected her for life to go. Good places, she thought, not always easy, but good. She picked up her phone. She texted. "Sunday works. Lily wants to bring cookies. Fair warning, she'll negotiate the recipe." And then she finished her cold tea and went to bed and let the day end.